You're listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast. We're an independent, general interest bookstore putting great reads in the hands of people in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles. Hosted by resident Skylighters, we're here to bring you new and exciting author conversations, group reads, and bookseller chats. Happy listening.
Hello, my beautiful listeners, and welcome to SKYLIT. This is the SKYLIT Books podcast, and I'm your host, Lance Morgan. Today, I'm so excited to have Alexander Monea to talk about his new book, The Digital Closet: How the Internet Became Straight. Alexander Monea is assistant professor in the English department in Cultural Studies program at George Mason University. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Lance, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No, it's my pleasure to have you on. It's so funny, we're calling from different sides of the country right now, and it's very different weather. I'm sweating in my office in 100-degree weather while it's raining over there, right?
I'm looking at dark gray skies as rain pours down.
Look at that. The wonders of technology connecting it all together. I don't even know what I'm saying there. So Alex, you have a reading for us today?
I do. I'm going to read to you from the introduction to the book.
Perfect. I'm so excited to hear it.
I don't know why they trust me, dumb fucks. That was Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook. We do not use social media and other internet platforms because we trust them, or at least nobody in my social circle seems to be such a dumb fuck, in the words of Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg. We use such platforms despite a lack of trust because they are no longer opt-in systems. The structure of the contemporary economy and governance increasingly demands digital participation. We are generally aware that the cost of this participation is our privacy. We submit to ceding our privacy upon realization that participation is not optional, and escaping the scope of digital surveillance is near impossible, even if participation were truly optional. But what if the costs are greater than a total loss of privacy? It's hard to imagine that the asking price for access to internet platforms could be higher, but it is. I'll be making the case throughout this book that the cost of admission also includes the continued marginalization of LGBTQIA+ communities and the amplification of misogyny and heteronormativity as they become automatically reproduced across the internet. This has both symbolic and material impacts on society. Decades of scholarship have demonstrated that representation in the media matters, that public visibility helps determine our collective assessment of who matters, which issues are important, and what our obligations are as a society. It also has material impacts on members of the LGBTQIA+ community, like lack of access to health information, online community, online revenue streams, and the precarity of having to seek out things like dates, community, and customers offline. The rhetoric of Silicon Valley is filled with imagined inevitabilities. This is perhaps nowhere truer than in the rise of online content moderation. Billions upon billions of pieces of content are being uploaded to internet platforms every year. How could any individual, human or corporate, ever hope to keep up? Human nature can be brutish, hypersexualized, and vile. How can we hope to stem the deluge of offensive content reflective of these facts? In typical TED Talk fashion, we are asked to believe that there is only one solution, but the silver lining is it's a panacea: automated content moderation. By leveraging advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques, the web can learn to police itself, and algorithmically organized humans can pick up any slack. In so doing, machines will be able to parse what we'll term sexual speech, a broad term meant to encapsulate all potentially adult content, from discourse about sex to sex education to pornography and other online sex work. However, a machine learning algorithm is only as good as its input data and training parameters. Unfortunately, when it comes to moderating sexual speech, the data is hopelessly flawed, and the parameters designed by Silicon Valley coders are not much better. They all contain heteronormative biases so severe it would be comical if it weren't so damn tragic. Our collective social discourse in the United States, particularly that which occurs online, contains rampant anti-LGBTQIA+ biases. Contrary to many popular narratives, these biases have increased in recent years. The Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation's annual Accelerating Acceptance Report, conducted by the Harris Poll, reports radical declines in LGBTQIA+ acceptance in the United States since 2016. The percentage of non-LGBTQIA+ 18 to 34-year-olds classified as allies, or those who report being very or somewhat comfortable with LGBTQIA plus individuals in all situations, dropped precipitously in the Trump era. Whereas 63% of the US population were classified as allies in 2016, that number dropped to 45% by 2018. And the total of male allies dropped from 62% to only 35%. Many of the most powerful internet platforms are based in the United States and are deeply impacted by these biases. The prejudices of a particularly vocal subsection of the population infect the training data, code, and coders behind automated content moderation to deleterious effects. The resulting algorithms end up over-scrutinizing, policing, and suppressing LGBTQIA+ discourse, including community forums, resources, outreach initiatives, activism, sex education, women's bodies, sex workers, and pornography. People targeted for algorithmic censorship have little recourse. While large vertically integrated companies like mainstream hetero porn production companies, the types of San Fernando Valley companies that produce aggressively heterosexual, frequently misogynistic, and now almost exclusively gonzo or point of view porn may escape censorship, niche content producers of sexual speech ranging from LGBTQIA+ advocacy to feminist and queer pornography are rarely so lucky. The result of this new regime of automated content moderation is what I call the digital closet. This term is meant to signify the ways in which LGBTQIA+ individuals may be allowed to enter the digital public sphere, but only so long as they bracket and obscure their sexual identities. Their very being is so pornographied by automated content filters that they are largely barred from sexual expression online. To participate in our digital world, as is increasingly necessary today, requires a silence that is alienating and damaging. Any exit from the digital closet will be met with swift punishment. LGBTQIA+ people will find their content flagged and censored, their account banned or deprioritized and thus rendered invisible. We'll lose any streams of online revenue, and we'll find this system weaponized against them by alt-right trolls looking to trigger all the aforementioned punishments. To add insult to injury, all of this will occur while tube sites like Pornhub operate walled gardens of heteronormative sexual expression, unhindered by the new platform economy. It seems as if a treaty has been made between the people in a moral panic over the proliferation of pornography and the internet platforms at the expense of the LGBTQIA+ community. Porn will be given a corner of the internet where it will flourish, as long as it's not that kind of porn.
Thank you for that reading. Wow, what a illuminating reading on, current internet culture. I want to start off our conversation with, how this is your first book, right?
Yeah, this is my first book.
This is your first book. One, congrats. That's not an easy thing to do, especially, did you start writing it during the pandemic?
Weirdly, no. I was writing it before the pandemic. It was a long project.
Long project. Did you finish it during the pandemic?
I did, yeah.
Oof, that's congrats. That's not an easy thing to do. But how did you get this topic? What led you to this topic for your first book?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Lance, because this book has really nothing to do with my earlier work or my dissertation. The honest way to say it would be that I stumbled into it ass backwards.
Oh, really?
I got invited to present with some people that were working on different aspects of like graphics and computer vision and things like that at a conference. And I had never really worked on those sorts of issues before. I had worked on natural language processing, so how machines understand language. And so I was starting to look around for a case study that might be interesting. And I realized that a lot of the instances of computers trying to see the world and understand what they were seeing were like comical, right? Like most of the instances you see in the news are just like total failures of these systems to perform in the way that they're meant to. And so I was trying to find a system that actually was working pretty well. And I thought about it for a while, and I realized that, before 2012, my friends and I used to play this game where you would type a random word, the most banal word you could think of, into Google image search and see how far you had to scroll before you got to porn. So you could search things like lawn chair, pizza, things like that. And it was rare anybody ever won, because if you scrolled far enough, it would eventually lead to porn. And somewhere around 2012, Google broke our game. And as I was reading more up on it, I realized it was because they had instituted computer vision algorithms to automate the censorship of porn. And so I thought, these algorithms seem to be operating better than a lot of the other computer vision algorithms. I'll look at those. And then as I looked at them, I just kept finding hetero and cisnormative biases stacked on top of each other, and the evidence mounted, and no one was really talking about it. So I just kept developing it, and it became a book.
I mean, it sounds like, it's interesting because you think of like sites like Google and all these, they're like forward thinking. They're supposed to be like, freeing us from like the restraints of like censorship, and like trying to like get us connected to like things that we wouldn't get if without the internet, this like endless supply of data and information. But like it's not true, right? It's not a true thing that we're getting there, especially for queer and non-normative thinking and culture. It's so funny because your book also talks about how like it's not just the conservatives doing this, conservatives, Christians, anti queer and sex groups, and like those people. It's a lot of liberals who are also doing this. How'd you how'd you stumble upon that?
Yeah, I mean, so in the book I call them strange bedfellows, because there's a very weird alliance of people that you would really never expect to see collectively organizing around an individual topic. A lot of the sort of alliance comes from historical anti-porn organizing in the 90s, right? People were spun up into a panic in the late 90s when the internet started coming into everyone's households about children's unwanted exposure to pornography, which whenever you hear that term, you need to like be careful and start reading more closely and figure out what's going on, because it touches on a nerve in American society that makes it both sort of really powerful and really nefarious. It has a really strong rhetorical power to get people to just automatically agree, right? You never want to be the person arguing that like children should be exposed to pornography, all the pornography on the internet, right? Or at least you usually don't want to be seen as that person in public. And so it really shuts down dissent. And behind the sort of facade of that argument, people tend to layer their own sort of interests in terms of blocking certain types of pornography, blocking sex education, fighting against sex workers, all sorts of stuff like that. And so really it was like looking at people that were using that language to make their argument and trying to figure out, what the actual impacts of the legislation they were passing were, figuring out how the regulations they were passing were actually affecting people on the ground. And it tends to be remarkably similar. There seems to be a lot of consensus across liberals and conservatives, across alt-right extremists and Christian evangelicals, that super sensitive over policing of pornography online is the way to go, even if it's at the expense of queer people.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's targeted too, it feels like usually, I mean, people of color, queer people, any sort of like radicalization, usually those are the targets of it, but it's always them. It's always one of the same groups who are a part of this. But it's so funny because before I think a few days ago, before this episode is recording, it's currently being recorded, but like when you're listening, it will be past tense. Before this recording, I was talking to a friend about it, and they were surprised because they're like, I see the internet as like the super queer space, and like, I see all my content is queer, and the people I follow, all of it. And then we were thinking about it. We're like, is that because we've curated this after years of being on the internet? And like, is that also a way for us to not like see the bigger problem? We all live in our little internet bubble because we're like, we don't want to see what the other side is doing, but like, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, it's a super interesting point, Lance, right? Like, I think there's a couple issues in what you said, right? So one is the issue of like filter bubbles or echo chambers that we're all aware of, right? We tend to assume that like our corner of the internet is what the internet really looks like, which can be really misleading when we're trying to understand, the internet as a whole or the larger effects it's having.
Right.
And then the other thing that I started unearthing as I was working on this book is that there's a really big difference between like you and I's ability to find what we want online as people that, grew up through different phases of the internet and might have more experience with it. And like a 15-year-old's ability to navigate the internet. And I think for me, one of the points that's like really dangerous here is that like, yeah, sure, there is queer pornography, there is queer content that you can find if you know what you're looking for or if you know how to look for it. But for a lot of people, they don't really have the sort of media literacy to get there yet. We just assume that all of these young people are really good at the internet. And I mean, I teach a lot of them, and it's not universally true. There's going to be a lot of queer youth out there that don't have the same access that people of our generation had in terms of connecting and building communities and experimenting with sexuality and things like that online. So I think part of it is a literacy issue, and assuming that everyone is able to like locate things and evade these barriers as well as each other. Part of it is an echo chamber thing. And part of it is just like where you get your content, right? Like,
yeah, it seems like a privilege problem too. The privilege of people who can be in that echo chamber are like, not thinking past that. Like they don't have to. It's interesting, especially right now where people like Florida's in the news right now for everything, for trying to, take a lot of safe spaces away for queer youth there, and like, make it harder for them to find resources and kind of be like, tightening that grip around their freedom to find it. Because a lot of people my age and a little bit older, a little bit younger, have found a lot of freedom on the internet to explore who we were and what we were. I remember Tumblr, rest in peace. The Tumblr days were so much fun because you were just like, oh, it's me and my friends who I've never met and probably will never meet again, but like it's all of us talking about gay shit and how fun that was. But like, I mean, if you don't know what happened to Tumblr, it got a untimely death. When was that? Like 2016, 2017?
2017. So
2017.
It was after the Congress passed the FOSTA-SESTA legislation that cracked down on all internet companies and conflated sex work with human trafficking. So all of these companies tried to crack down on any sort of explicit content anywhere on their sites.
I remember like a lot of people equating that to like putting a lot of queer terminology in the DSM. Like it just like felt like, grouping. They were like, this is close enough where we can group this together and demonize all of this without like, getting a lot of flashback because the conservative groups will be happy. And honestly, a lot of liberals, and by that I mean centrists, also will back that too because it's close enough. But yeah, like the untimely death of that, it seems like where are they finding community? And it's just it's so interesting and sad at the same time. A lot of your book talks about like pornography and sex work too, like in terms of like heteronormativity, like how it's so interesting to me because like sex work and sex work and pornography has been around for ever, like cave
Millennia.
drawings, millennia, like cave drawings, since we learned how to, since we opened our eyes basically. How is the, it seems like it comes in waves, right? Like there are waves where it's very like queer and you see like, oh wow, maybe it's changing, and then it just like the next day could go down. How was it? Did you see a lot of that in your research?
Yeah, because I was writing during that time period where FOSTA SESTA was passed. So I
Mhm.
started before that and was really collecting examples during that. And the night and day difference was really sad and difficult to
Mhm.
learn about, right? So, I mean, talking about heteronormativity in the sex work industry, seeing sites where sex workers would figure out which clients were dangerous getting shuttered, finding personal ad sites getting shuttered, to the point where people had to go out in the street and solicit strangers again.
Mhm.
And hearing their stories about that was horrifying, right? Because
Right.
it's just like a really precarious position that we put people in, knowing that it was not going to stop anything, right? Like it did very little good and it put
Mhm.
a lot of people in harm's way. And that burden is borne disproportionately by people of color, disabled people, trans sex workers, things like that.
Right.
And so, it's throughout the sex work industry, you're always going to see like it get worse and worse the more intersections of marginalized identity a person participates in, right? So
Mhm.
like anything that I trace in the book has like, a pretty bad impact on like white cis gay man. But like as you start adding layers of marginalization, it just like amplifies. And you can see that really clearly in like the stories of people that were forced back onto the street to do,
Mhm.
real classic sex work, right? Soliciting Johns on the street corner.
And like it's I mean, queerness has always been a part of sex work, and it just to try and take that out of it, and your book talks about it, it's just bland. It's the same. You're getting the same thing. You're getting nothing new. You're getting no innovation and no creativity, and it seems it seems like taking a step back, or somehow taking a step back while not taking a step, maybe like a backwards escalator. But
Yeah,
like it's right, you're like stepping on an escalator going the wrong direction. You're not moving, but still somehow you're going back.
like I said in the book, I think that really is the porn industry's deepest, darkest secret, right? They like make money off of us thinking that porn is unstoppable and that it's like horribly misogynistic and things like
Right.
that, which it can be, but uh, the their deep secret is that it's boring. It's the same thing over and over and over again. They just mimic
Really
each
is.
other, and it even trickles down into I mean, there's very little resemblance to like amateur pornography anymore because people are monetizing it, right? So like they call
Right.
them pro-ams or pro-amateurs, but even they are impacted by this, right? Like the metadata that you can use to like describe the scene that you're producing are all standardized by whatever site you're uploading it to, right? So like
Right.
the very ideas you have for like what to shoot and how to shoot it are derived from mainstream porn. It just ends up being really, really rote for an era where supposedly you can, publish anything and everything, and all sexual desires are available at a whim to explore. Right? It just doesn't really play out in that fantastical way that people describe it.
It's like we're hitting a point where there's too much that there's nothing. It's like a singularity point. Oh my God, am I solving? Is this like the meaning of life? There's too much porn. There's too much porn, so there's no porn. I solved it. So number 42. So yeah, we got there. This, guys, you heard it first here. The digital closet answers the mysteries of life. It answers that question. What is life?
I'm gonna have Lance as my co-author from now on so that we can solve all the world's mysteries.
I'm gonna take a pen and just in all the books in the store, just write that as a blurb on the cover, if that's okay with you. If you give me that.
And write math equations of like, life equals porn, porn equals null. Porn.
I'll put just strange symbols on it too. Just go fully in. I'm just gonna dive in. No, it's even supposedly queer porn. By that I mean like gay porn, targeted mostly at gay men, which is like sometimes the queerest porn you get out there. It feels like still trying to copy hetero porn and trying to be as heteronormative as possible while like being like, yeah, but technically we're two guys. It's like, okay, but like if you have to say, well, technically there's a problem. It just seems like we're headed in the direction no one really saw us going towards. Is there a solution? Is there like, ways forward that you, from studying all of this, like can theorize, maybe can help push us forward?
So I don't know. I think that it's weird to write a book of like cynical critique and not offer anything like that, right? Even though it's the hardest part of a book to write, because it's where you're really vulnerable, because it's the most easily proved wrong, because you can just look back at the book in a year or 5 years and say, well, obviously that was totally wrong. So I tried to put together my best, but caveat here, very provisional and like in need of like supplementation by like activists on the ground and people that experience different perspectives and different echo chambers online. But I tried to put together, like, from what I had read, some of the like things we could do, right? And I organized them from sort of revisionist everyday goals, and those would be things like getting major social media companies to commit to an anti-censorship pledge, especially around queer content, because I think that's easy to mobilize around. It has a successful base of activists already working in the area. I think that's something that's doable. Others similarly, like revisionist things, would be like keeping a database that monitors what content is getting censored, so we can produce better knowledge about what's getting censored, why, and where. Because a lot of the stuff that I was trying to find for the book was really ephemeral, right? Because the content's getting taken down, so the content doesn't exist anymore. What you do find are like a tweet here and there from someone that notes that they had content deleted on such and such a date, or every once in a while a journalist would publish a piece on something getting taken down. And so some sort of like group that monitors what's getting taken down and can sort of hold companies accountable, so that they can't just say that it's a fluke or a one-off instance. These are the sorts of everyday things that would be really helpful. Organizing, demanding commitments, collecting and producing better knowledge about what's going on. I don't think any of those will really get us across the finish line. They're really helpful, they're noble goals, but they're sort of plugging a sinking ship, right? Some of the bigger goals that I think really get to the meat of the issue, but are more idealistic, are things like thinking about making social media into public utilities, right? Not letting a single person control what 2 to 3 billion users see on an everyday basis. So publicizing the companies. Another big one for me is defunding the police, right? The criminal justice system and its relationship with sex work is really central in a lot of these problems. And it's really at the nexus point where a lot of these problems become physically dangerous, like mortally dangerous for people. And so I think that there's a lot of connection between that you might not expect between arguments over not censoring queer stuff online and some of the Black Lives Matter protests around defunding the police.
And on that, I mean, like, yeah, so like the criminalization of, and I mean, in popular culture too, you see it like, it makes sense why, the police is after a lot of sex work because, like look at TV shows like Law and Order SVU, which is like, there's a lot of harm, or like there's, I mean, all of those cop shows usually have episodes about sex and how like, sex work is we're evil and sex workers are like the dehuman in some ways and like lesser than versus like, oh, these are people that you're around all the time, right? You're around, everyone has some sort of connection to sex work in one way or the other. And like, it's something that like a lot of people don't want to look at. And I mean, and then we let the cops in and not do anything about it, especially in a city like LA where like, sex work is huge here. There's the porn industry is huge here, but like still the LAPD, you know what? I shouldn't finish that. They know where I work. But yeah, no, sorry, I was interrupting you.
Well, I mean, maybe if they put you and I in charge of this, Lance, we can censor propaganda instead of the queer pornography.
You tell me when. Tell me when.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say was that so when I was doing this end of the book where I was trying to sort of come up with solutions, my editor at MIT, I'm really thankful for this, pushed me to be more imaginative, right? Like I was being a little conservative because the book's supposed to sell to a public audience as well as academics. It's my first book. I didn't want to, offend anyone. And so I was kind of holding some punches. And, she said, really just go for it and say what you think. And I think the issue is that when you're trying to imagine a future that's like really better, it's an exercise in utopia, right? Which is hard for us to do in this day and age, right? It's hard to imagine something better. It's hard to imagine an exit. Even if you imagine it, it's really hard to imagine it in anything but fuzzy detail, right? Because so much of it's going to play out in historically specific terms, and different people need to come to the table and negotiate it. And I think you might like this, but like when I was trying to think of like the fuzzy image that came closest to like what I would aim for, it was that meme, fully automated luxury gay space communism, right? I think that's what I'm looking for, Lance.
This is the future. This is the future that millennials want, right? That sort of, not that specific meme, but like that, that idea of that meme structure. And no, I mean, sign me up. Tell me where the what is it? The petition. What's that petition organization called? Why can't I remember right now? The sign this, go sign this. Yeah. Just send it my way. You have my email. Listeners, listen, let's do it. Let's organize and save the internet. Oh my god, save the internet. That sounds like that's a great logo, not logo, what's the word I'm looking for? Catchphrase for us. Save the internet. The internet, save the world. The last question I want to ask you is, I don't know why that in the past 20 years, oh god, 20 years, the internet has become this normalized thing now where it's like it's a part of all of our lives. It's there every day. Like we can't escape it from like the time from when you open your eyes till you close it. How, like, it feels normalized, but like what you're talking about is like radical thinking still. It's the radicalization of what the internet has been crudely turned into by a lot of conservative thinkers, people who want to fight the internet in 2022. They want to fight the internet. Like, how should we look at this in like a radical viewpoint, and to like, change it, to make it better, to get, regain control of what we're seeing and what we can, what we can contribute to the world through the internet as queers, as queer people, as not as people who don't fit the heteronormative structure.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and hard question, Lance, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it has to do with like pushing for, I mean, in some ways pushing for the internet to live up to its own original hype and promise, and in some ways correcting some of the like libertarian principles at that promise that are problematic, right?
Right.
Like the sort of wild west aspect of it, where like anyone can just hurt anyone however they want and there's no accountability or consequences, right? That's not something I want to preserve. But some of the promises about, open and free access to knowledge and like democratic structure, that's stuff that we could still aim for by, looking to deconstruct platforms, social media platforms, and make it so that the web isn't like, right now the internet is really synonymous with social media platforms and like high-end brands, right? Like if I go to Google and search something, I'm never getting someone's like blog or GeoCities page anymore. I'm getting corporate branded like magazine articles or social media links. So I think, moving away from the sort of platform structure of the internet is one way that would be really useful to sort of circulate ideas better, as well as fighting to take control of platforms or push for better governance at platforms. None of these really can save us because of the regulations that are in place and the sort of capitalist machine behind them. So again, I come back to gay space communism, right? Like you need communism. You need a real revolution if you want things to actually be utopic. Otherwise, we're just plugging holes in a sinking ship, and it's a never-ending fight.
Gay space communism sounds like the like political space drama that needs to come out now. Like, who's making this movie? Who has, I mean, Barry Jenkins. I want someone to, who's a great queer filmmaker who I want to see make this. I mean, Alex, I'm just saying, you said the words. If in 2025 I hear Alex Monet's gay space drama is coming out, I'm tuning in. HBO Max, you heard us. You heard it here first.
Well, HBO Max can hire us together. I need partners, and you know that LA scene, right? Like,
I got you. I got you. We'll do this together. All right, Alex, this has been great. This has been so much fun to talk about. No, thank you so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure. To our listeners, thank you for either coming back to listen again. We love you. We appreciate you. You mean so much to me and everyone at Skylight, but also to our new listeners. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And if this is your first episode, go back and listen to some episodes. We have some really good backlog, and keep on listening. We have some good episodes coming out like this one. And to everyone listening, you have a great rest of your day. Stay cool, because I don't know what the future's looking like, but it's hot right now. And stay beautiful. Do something nice for yourself. All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Skylight Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylightbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.